Thank you. Thank you, the organizing committee, and in particular, Professor Kyriopoulos for inviting me here. I'm very happy to be here. I never thought I would be here hearing positive things about the United States of America. And I'm not here to defend the system, just present the key issues and how those relate to the economic and financial crisis that the entire world is facing, and whether that has any connection with the situation in Greece. So let me start by describing what I'm going to present. I will provide a little background, very simple summary of the US system, then look at the financial and economic crisis in the United States that some people think maybe doesn't face any financial or economic crisis. Look at the healthcare reforms, then the implementation, some of the results and expectations, because this is an ongoing program, and some implications for Greece. So to describe simply, the US healthcare system consists of 4 components until 2010. As a matter of fact, March of 2010. There is an employer-based insurance that contributes about 1/3 of the funds for the healthcare system in the United States. There is the so-called governmental sponsor and funded program called Medicare, which is exclusively for the older people, and it has also people who have disabilities. Then there is the other governmental program that is shared between the federal government and the states called Medicaid, and it's for the poor. And finally, there is a 4th issue, which is the uninsured, who the latest count is around 50 million people out of 300 million in the United States. The US care system spends $2,624 billion. That is about 40%, or a little over 40% of the entire world's resources for healthcare systems. And it's a common mistake to ignore that system because it's so huge. It's almost half of the entire world, when the population is only 5% of the earth. The per capita expenses is $8,000 plus, and the last number is very significant, and it has something to do with the reforms. The US spends about 18% of its GDP on health care. That is significantly more than the next country, which might be about 11–12%, and then going down very fast. Greece is about 10%, but these numbers we don't know these days. Out of the $2+ trillion, almost $900 billion is spent on hospital care, then 543 for physician services, and about 110, I'm giving you some numbers, for dental services. One of the important things is, despite the high number of uninsured, is that the out-of-pocket expenses, what people pay directly out of their pocket, not covered by insurance or the Medicare or the Medicaid, is about 11%. And what is critical in that is that for hospital care, the out-of-pocket expenses, and I want the Greeks to know that, is less than 3%, including the uninsured. That is, everybody pays less than 3% for hospital care. And then you have the percentages for private insurance, the contribution, in other words, in the share, which is about 1/3. And contrary again to general beliefs, the US is not as capitalistic in the healthcare system as most people believe. Because if you combine the Medicare and Medicaid, you have there something in the area more than what the private sector pays through private insurance. And there are other non-profit programs and little programs that amount to 20%. The problems with the US care system is that the costs are very high. A lot of businesses were complaining that affects the competitiveness of the United States versus Europe or Asia, China, India, and so forth. And that the rate of growth is much higher than the rate of growth of the economy. And of course, there are those who are uninsured, and everybody picks on that. And the issue was how do you constrain costs. Actually, in one of the latest speeches by the President Obama, he was suggesting that if we are spending 18 and the next country 12% of GDP, maybe we should go down to close to the 12% rather than go above 18%. As you heard previously, and I want to say that what you heard a few minutes ago by Mr. Jovet, it's not inconsistent. Actually, I thought that we collaborated when, in fact, I never met Mr. Jovet in what he was presenting. There is a financial and economic crisis, and he articulated a little bit of what it is. I will show you the effects in the United States, where the unemployment jumped from 5 to 10%, which is huge for the United States. The wages went down, but not significantly with Greek standards or other countries, about a little over 5%. But bankruptcies increased by the millions, and foreclosures increased by the millions. Talking about the impact of the financial crisis on health is huge. I don't want to contradict Mr. Jovet, but when you lose your home or you abandon your home because you cannot afford it or because the value of your home is less than what you owe to the bank, that brings a lot of stress to a lot of families. And there were millions of them. Over 3 million people had lost their homes during the crisis from 2007 to 2010. Talking about the economic effects, you can see that the stock market went down 50%. At one point, to use one of the index, the Dow Jones was over 14,000, and then went down to 6,500. That is more than 50%. The values of housing went 20% down. One thing that a lot of people don't know is that the capitals in banks is less than 5% of their assets. That's why they ask a lot of collateral evidence in order to grant your loan. So if a house is a collateral for the loan and the values go 20%, all the banks are in trouble. And that's what happened. The last, which summarizes, contrary to other countries, and was measured in the United States because we had a census, a national census in 2010, the overall wealth in the United States among all the individuals fell close to 40%, 39.6%. Now, among economists, it's an old story going back to the 60s, by an author named Patinkin that introduced for the first time the wealth effect on the activities of individuals. So what you have is you have a double whammy. One thing is how well the economy works, employment, incomes, and things like that. Another one is how much wealth was affected. And what is very unusual for the United States, a lot of people borrow money to own their homes. So, and as they pay back the loan, they accumulate equity. And in the United States, which is notorious for not having a lot of savings, and a lot of times it's negative savings, they use that equity. They use the value of the home above and beyond of what they owe to the banks to finance vacations, buy a car, buy whatever. And therefore, you can see the whole economy can affect it when the values of housing is going down and people are affected, the banks are affected, and then the economy in turn is affected significantly. Now, in contrast to what happened back in the 1930s and beyond, and after Keynes, who came from the UK, the Americans appear to be more smarter learning the lessons of that Great Depression than the Europeans. So, and I will come to that as to how they face the crisis, but in essence, they try to salvage the banking system and the investment system, and at the same time try to stimulate the economy. The last one never happened. It has not happened. Maybe has been recognized lately by Germany, but still we don't know whether they know that or it's a political issue or a political game. So in the midst of the crisis, and that is very critical because this is where Greece is right now. For over a year, and despite he campaigned for that, Obama tried to introduce and pass something we call national health insurance, something we have here by name but not by reality. We call it Ethnico Systema Υγείας, but it's not real, it's not an Ethnico Systema Υγείας. So what was proposed by the Affordable Care Act, which they call it also Obamacare lately, is an incremental, not radical change on the system. You build on what you have, rather than destroy what you have and start from the scratch. So it's an incremental system that basically tries to provide more private insurance with changes, and I'll come to that. Then you expand the Medicare system, that is the system that provides funds for the elderly, expand the Medicaid system, which is the system that, or the program that provides funds for the poor, and also reduce the uninsured. There are lots of things and lots of criticism and lots of political fights from both sides. And even the Democratic Party was not supporting as much Obama as the Republican Party never agreed to it. So going to the private insurance changes, in essence, the program has not done yet. That is going to provide subsidies to small business, subsidies to individuals to buy insurance. And insurance, getting insurance is mandatory. If you don't get it, you have to pay a penalty. And that is business and individuals. And that was challenged in the Supreme Court. And actually, after years, 27 of the 50 states challenged that. And they lost a few months ago when the Supreme Court found a way to say that this law is constitutional. Among the changes is something that is not known in most countries. It's like the so-called notion of pre-existing conditions. And by the way, females from the day they are born have pre-existing conditions in the United States. And their premiums are much higher than it is for men. The issue of pre-existing condition is that if you had an incident, besides being a female, whether it was your heart or your kidneys or whatever, and you try to change employment, all of a sudden you may not find insurance to cover you. So the law immediately introduced the notion that if you have pre-existing condition, that is no reason for insurance not to cover you or to raise the premiums for that. And also for individuals 19 to 26, individuals who go to college or universities, they were allowed to have the insurance of their parents, so they will be covered by their parents. These were big changes, small changes in terms of dollars and cents, but big changes in the system, and that's what I meant by change in the private system. In the Medicare expansion basically is that, which has not happened yet, it will happen in 2014. Individuals and small business will be offered to either join a private plan for insurance or join the Medicare plan. The idea of Obama was what congressmen have, unlike in Greece, like what vouleftές have, or parliamentary members. He said everybody in the United States should have at least as good a plan as the politicians have. So the idea is that it will be a standard offered, although everybody will not offer that. And there is no reason for you to change if you have a private coverage already. But individuals and small business will be subsidized to join the Medicare or a private plan or the Medicaid plan. One of the first acts was through the Medicaid is to cover all the children in the United States. Again, and what is expected after 2014 is the number of uninsured will be dropped by 2/3 because some people will decide to pay the penalty, which is not very severe, if they don't buy insurance and stay without insurance. There are three pillars of the healthcare system. It's first, provide new information and protection to consumers. improve the quality and lower the cost, and increase access to affordable care. Two significant characteristics. Besides introducing an incremental program, building on what you have, there is a time of element. The changes did not take place overnight. The program allows 5 years for two reasons. One is for the idea to stay with the people, or to grow in people, and there were a lot of negative reaction because the other side maybe was better in complaining about the program as being communist or socialist or whatever that the president was promoting. But the other thing is that, and that is significant, there are a lot of, when you're making changes, there are a lot of things you don't know. Where are you going to go, what the impact is going to be. And you need pilot programs to introduce those changes, to see how they work. So you can nick it here and there and improve them, and by the time you implement them, they will be working better. One of them is that states will request to establish the so-called medical insurance exchange programs. In other words, states will offer insurance to people who have no insurance or who want to buy insurance from the states. The private system is there, but states had that. A lot of states refused. As I said, 27 of them were fighting the president or the law. Now they run out of time because this is the next year the exchanges should be in operation, because in the following year, 2014, people will be buying insurance either from the state or the federal government or from the private insurance. So one of the key issues is that gradual implementation. It was not only incremental changes, gradual change, but also gradual implementation. And the reason I have year by year in the next few slides is to underline the point rather than describe all the detailed information that comes in every year. So in the first year, there were changes in insurance. Lifetime maximums were eliminated. People up to age 26 could join their parents in insurance. There were some preventive services offered free to the children across the board, whether they had insurance or not. And one of the things that might be very useful is they expanded the so-called community health centers, which approximate the so-called Kendra years in Greece. Community health centers are going to be expanded by a factor of 6. They were spending about $2 billion, and the new program is going to add $12 billion to that, and they expect to serve about 20 million people. In the second year, prescription drugs discounts were offered for brand name drugs that elderly were falling short, more preventive services, especially to the seniors, and reducing premiums. Reducing premiums, the law allows the two rules, the 80-20 rule and the 85-15 rule. The 85-15 rule says basically that if an insurance charges a premium of $100, it better return 85 of those dollars in the form of services to the insured. If they don't, they have to bring the money back and give it to the individuals. The 80-20 rule is for individuals, and that's very significant because people who buy individual insurance, usually they were getting about 50 cents to the dollar. That rule says that the insurance has to provide 80% of the premium in terms of services, otherwise they have to reimburse those who bought the insurance plan. In last year alone, over $2.5 billion were returned to individuals because of these rules. Linking payment to quality, you may have heard that, but this is going to become, although there are pilot studies now that they try to see how that is going to work, improving the system efficiency and options for long-term insurance. In the fourth year is where you see improvement again, more preventive services, proven cost-effective that will be introduced and offered, increased payments to primary doctors, because the idea that you heard earlier from Dr. Borosaki, the The idea is that we say, yes, we want to stimulate primary care doctors, but the fees and the incomes are so low, nobody selects that from the perspective of future doctors. Therefore, unless you change the reward for the service they provide, you're not going to have it. Anyway, the last year, the 2014 and beyond, which the program is ongoing, is going to introduce the mandatory insurance and provide incentives and at the same time impose penalties. And there is a new thing that is coming now around. Contrary to the fee-for-service system or fee-per-visit or encounter system, what is considered now is to have a fee per person. In other words, a doctor will be responsible for patient for whatever that patient needs. And if he needs special services, the doctor will be responsible. So the payment will not be to subsidize or pay for procedures which are repeated again and again. Oops.
Can we bring together now the...
I'm finishing in 2 minutes. I'm going to say the financial crisis is on the way to be okay. It's not done yet. The economic crisis, the United States works in that. The unemployment rate is down to, according to the last month, 7.7%. The healthcare reforms are on the way to be implemented on time, and there were no extensions. And there is a political crisis, as some of you might have heard. And that has something to do, and it's not different than Europe. There are forces that like to see the public sector shrink. And it's philosophical, political, whatever you call it. They don't like to see the government. And you saw even in the United States, in the healthcare system, the government plays a very significant role, much larger than the private system. So, it seems there are a lot of problems in this country and a lot to be changed. The crisis is an opportunity. So the idea is don't waste this opportunity. And I have 2 slides to show you. If the economy has suffered a loss of about 20–30%, and contrary to what we described that we have a national health care system, it's not true. First of all, there are no poor people officially in Greece, and that is the ultimate of hypocrisy. This system, which has been tested based on numbers from the United States, if you impose coinsurance and deductibles of the order of 20, 250, etc., you can reduce the cost in the healthcare system by 22%. If you be a little more stringent and improve and increase the deductibles for middle class to $500, you can reduce the cost in the system 28%. That leaves only one significant exception. You have to define who is poor here and needs help to get healthcare system. Because right now, you have people who are unemployed and people who are not covered by EPOI or whatever system, ICA or MICA, and they have no insurance, contrary to what we say. Thank you very much.